Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Zerbis. I'm the Technical Evangelist at CTC, and today we're going to be talking about another one of our workflows with the Revit Express tools. Specifically today, we're talking about how to use Spreadsheet Link and Spreadsheet Link Express to do some manipulation of your project browser and some of the organization that happens inside of there, and potentially naming conventions as well. Actually, focusing primarily on naming conventions today. While we're doing this presentation today, feel free to throw questions into that questions window. I tend to monitor those as I'm talking, so if you have a question, I like to try and answer it right when it's meaningful to you. And also, at the end of today's presentation, there will be a short survey, as always. We really appreciate that when you guys give us feedback on our presentations. We appreciate any new ideas you give us about future presentations. Helps us come up with topics that are meaningful for you and your workflows. So with that, let's jump into today's presentation and start talking about what we have in store today. So the issues that a lot of us have been dealing with lately is that many of our companies have some kind of a standard within Revit for naming our views, for organizing our project browser, for how we want our views set up, potentially how our sheets are configured, which sheets are supposed to exist, all that kind of information. Possibly using capitalization or title casing in different portions of your views. And the problem is Revit really has no method involved to standardize that, to force a standard on how your views names are configured or what properties exist on your views. So when other users are brought into your project, it can lead to a bit of confusion. If one person in the company is doing things one way, somebody else does them a different way, kind of it's tedious to kind of transition back and forth and figure out somebody else's naming conventions and come into a project where perhaps there's no standards involved at all and the names are all completely mishmashed. That's kind of frustrating for people. Or sometimes within our companies, midstream we might define a new naming convention. How do you go back to previous projects and rename all the views properly so that everything follows the current standard and so that things can all work together smoothly? And so that it makes it a bit easier when people are going back to previous projects to make everything just kind of flow and update properly. How do you do that? That's kind of a difficult thing to do. Revit itself doesn't have a really good way other than just manual data entry to get that all fixed up. And sometimes users don't go through and set all the view properties they're supposed to. How do you go back through and either logically by automatic means or illogically, just manually, randomly, go through and help to correct some of those settings? How can you do that? In Revit, usually the best way to do it is just straight up grunt work, making yourself sit down and get it done, or trying to bang people over the head and make them do their work properly, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But usually there's portions of our project browser that just are left in disarray, especially areas with working views. So how can we go through and fix that? Well, what I like to use for this is I like to use Spreadsheet Link. Spreadsheet Link tends to be a really solid tool for a lot of my data manipulation inside of Revit. It's a pretty simple way to go through. Since a lot of us know how to do a lot of work in Excel, we can go through and use the power of Excel to actually to make some updates to our project. Now in this case today, I have a couple of different automated methods for naming views based on certain rules, based on properties of the views. And this process is then very repeatable, and I can even import this into previously existing projects and fairly quickly set a bunch of parameters on views, either by multi-selection or whatever the case may be, and get that project brought into standard pretty quickly. You can also do fairly easy data extraction for manual fixes. So in areas where perhaps a view template doesn't automate the setting of properties, I can sometimes leverage Spreadsheet Link or possibly schedules in Revit, either way, to get this data set up in a way that I can actually update that or give it off to somebody else and have them start filling out some information in my spreadsheets, and then import that information back into Revit and update my views accordingly. And then in some cases, I'm really a fan of leveraging Spreadsheet Link Express. This tool lets me take some saved settings from Spreadsheet Link and put the power in the end user's hands. So when they run, say, one process that does maybe room area calculations, it also automates the naming of their views. So if they want one to happen that they need, it automatically does the second thing that maybe they do or don't like, but it'll automate the process of naming their views in a standard way and kind of help you be a bit more of a BIM Nazi, perhaps, to kind of really make sure your views are named in the same way. It does make things more efficient. So even if users do get sloppy and lazy, the Spreadsheet Link Express tool can sometimes bring that into standard very quickly, and they don't have to know necessarily what's happening behind the scenes. And so we'll show a couple of examples of that today. Keeping my eye on the questions window here, since I don't have a poll pulled up today, what I'd like to know is how detailed do you want me to get in the Excel workflow? Should I show you some of how I'm building these formulas that do some of this intelligence, or just show you the concepts of what can be done? I know sometimes people really like to see how the formulas are put together and some of the logic that I put into my spreadsheet. So take a couple of seconds here while I go to the next page, and let me know if you want to see some of the Excel magic that I'm doing behind the scenes. There's a couple of questions or comments rather coming in right now, so I'll keep an eye on those, and we'll use that sort of as a polling window here. All right, the next topic here, I'm going to talk about some of the workflows I'm actually going to go through today for you. So there's kind of three primary workflows that I like to work with in here to talk about how I can manipulate some of this information. First of all, with Spreadsheet Link and Microsoft Excel, I'm going to establish some kind of a plan for view naming rules. And some of the comments coming through are saying, yes, please show us some of the logic. So fantastic. I'll jump in and show the logic that I'm doing inside of Excel. I'm not going to build up the full formula because it's kind of a long formula, but I'll build up some of the core essence of it, and I'll let you guys have some fun in figuring out some of the extra backgroundy stuff that I'm doing, and I might copy and paste it across so you can see the final result of what I came up with just recently for my super awesome naming convention, because I like the naming convention. So you're going to be subject to my convention today. Also, we'll talk about how to get the title on the sheet naming to happen as well at the same time, so that when a user generates a plan view, they may or may not name it, but as long as they have the right visibility settings on the view and some right parameters, it'll also automatically name the title on the sheet. Because in a lot of cases, the name we want for the view name is not necessarily the name we want to show up on the sheet. And so I can actually do some background magic for that as well at the same time. So I'll show some of that. Again, there's more comments coming in saying, yes, please show the magic. So we're definitely going to do that. Also, I know a few of you, though I'm not a big fan of this. It's personal preference, of course, and obviously we've all got different ways of working. But some of us like to include the sheet and detail number on the view name in the project browser. And up until recently, there really isn't a great way to do that. There's no way in Revit to do it automatically. I can do some sorting of my project browser by the sheet that something's on, but there's not really a way to name my views automatically. So sometimes my detail views, I like to get all my detail views nicely named and organized in a way that makes sense. And sometimes putting the detail number and sheet number on that might be a meaningful way, specifically for detail views. And I could do that as well. So I'll give an example of how that might work in our project browser or in the Spreadsheet Link environment. And then I'm also going to talk about the Spreadsheet Link Express repeatable workflow. And there's a little known piece of magic that I'm going to share with you today to talk about how to use information and really really kind of talk about how you can export certain information for people. And this can be used in a lot of ways, but only import some of it back in automatically. So we'll talk about that workflow as well, and I'm going to use that for some magic that I'm going to play with some of my sheet naming conventions here. So there was a question that just popped in that says, how do you quickly generate a view list schedule that labels the views with suffix not on sheet? And actually, I can show you how to do that today as well. I'm not going to exactly do that exact example, but I'll show you how to put the actual detail number and sheet number on there. And then if it's not on a sheet, you could obviously change up my filters and change what it actually suffixed the view name with. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that particular workflow by putting the detail and sheet number on there as opposed to putting not on sheet, but it could work either way. So, all right, let's jump into this. I'm going to jump directly into Revit here. I don't like doing too much PowerPoint in my presentation, so let's jump into Revit, get our hands dirty, and start taking a look at what's going on here. So I just switched over to the Revit window, and by the way, I know once in a while my presentations will drop out just for a short while. I'm trying to keep an eye on my audience view up there to make sure that it's not dropping my connection. If it does, I'll try to pause for a minute while it connects back up. Just let you know it will come back. My Wi-Fi once in a while hiccups periodically. Okay, so let's talk first of all about what we have going on in this particular project that I have up in front of me, and some of the issues that many of us run into with our projects. So I've had various different users working on this, and they all have different concepts about how views should be named. So, and that's pretty typical for many of us, right? I've got some people who spell out the entire level name in all capital letters. They go out there and tell me what the view is. Maybe they've duplicated previous views, and they tell me if it's existing or new. Fantastic. I like that. That's great. Down below here, I've got some ceiling plans, right? These are labeled in a different way. These are using a number, a 2-digit indicator here to tell me what level it's on instead of spelling out the whole word level 1, because that helps my views be a lot shorter. See, I can collapse my project browser and give myself some drafting space out here by using this kind of naming convention as opposed to a fully spelled out, very wordy naming convention up here. So up to you as to how you want to do that, but we can pick one and go with it and have it auto-propagated across my entire project browser. In this case, down here, I've got a couple of other views similarly named, but then I go down to my general actual architectural floor plan views. And if you look down here, I've got just level 1, 2, and 3. Well, what are the intent of those views? I have no idea, other than the fact that it's grouped in my general grouping here. But if I was to go through the process of making some brand new floor plan views up here, and I told it that I didn't want to duplicate existing views, and I made a bunch of them, and I clicked OK, well, they're all going to have some kind of a goofy naming convention up here in my question marks list, and these all have to get named in some form or fashion as well. And so I'm going to take all of these views, and I'm going to assign them to a view template. I'm a big proponent of using view templates. If you aren't using view templates, I think you should be. So let's see, what kind of a view do I want to do here? I'm going to do export plans. I don't think I have any export plans in this project, so I'm going to go ahead and use my export CAD plans. There is a view creator abbreviation here called export CAD. That particular abbreviation I'm going to use in a minute. In fact, if you guys have seen any of our presentations before on view creator, had I wanted to make these using a particular standard, I could have used view creator. It would have automatically assigned the view template for me, and it would have named the view properly based on whatever my naming convention happens to be. I like the 2-digit indicator for level that I can establish, and then having the view templates abbreviation, whatever I put in there, that actually helps me name my views. And then if it's existing, new construction, whatever phase it happens to be. I like using those 3 primary methods. And then if I am doing something like an enlarged plan up here, I like to put the area of the building based on what scope box surrounds my actual floor plan out there. So if I look up here, for example, I've got an area A for my building, and I've got an area B. Those 2 scope boxes, those would be assigned to my nested views here, my dependent views. I also have an overall, someplace out here, I have an overall, building overall scope box that I use in a lot of cases to crop down the remainder of my views out there to make sure that they're all the same size and they're all consistently sized and placed on sheets in sort of the same way. So that's a technique that I like to use. You might use a different technique, that's fine, but by using that technique, I can actually use parts of the scope boxes, because my views, when I actually work with my views here, you'll notice that it knows what scope box surrounds that view. When I make that choice here in this list, it'll know that, and I can use that as part of my naming convention. And View Creator does that automatically when I'm using it to generate my views, but not all views are generated that way. Some views are duplicated and turned into working views, or whatever the case may be. So example of working views down here, I've got a few of those. Now I have set up in my project with one of these working views, I have an owner option down here. And part of my standard when I'm working with people is when you duplicate a view, if it's a working view specifically, you should be putting your initials as the owner on that view. So even if you don't name your view right, it doesn't really matter. If somebody comes out here and just has this view duplicated, maybe they called it out as a working view, maybe this was just a basement general plan. I don't know, could have been anything, whatever, right? But if they duplicate that view, and as long as they put themselves as the owner, later on, I can filter my views out. I can go back to that person, talk with them about what views they own. If people go into my projects and they don't claim a view if it's a working view, I just straight up delete it, right? If I don't know whose it is, it's obviously not important to keep. I go through and delete those types of views. That might seem a little extreme, but if you don't want it, don't name it. Don't put your name on it. If you do want it and you want to keep it in the project, name it. And that way, we can also use that as part of our automated naming convention later on, because there might be 4, 5, 6 different duplicate views for different levels in the building depending on who's working in certain areas. They may have their own working floor plan view. Fantastic. Let them have a good time with that. So then they just have to make sure they put their initials out here. And if they want more than one per level, fine. Go ahead and put CB1, CB2, whatever you want to do. I don't care. You can put whatever you want down here as long as I can identify it as your view. But then I also leverage that heavily for my naming conventions. And so we'll use that in a minute as well. But you can see my naming conventions are all over the place. And I don't like that. Some people here are using some random variation here. First RCP plan. Well, that's great. Fourth RCP plan doesn't follow any of my standards in my project at all. Doesn't indicate the level name. Doesn't use my 2-digit abbreviation up here. It's nothing. So we're going to go through and fix all of that. So let's go through the exercise here of actually building up a means and method for how to get our view names to associate to this properly. There was a question, by the way, that popped up and said some people have quite a few scope boxes named. How do you mass create a whole bunch of ceiling plans using those scope boxes? Well, the answer is View Creator, actually. If you have an overall floor plan, so if I go through and do a ceiling plan right now on my project, well, I already have some ceiling plans, but let's just say for my ceiling plans, here my existing ceiling plans, I wanted to create the areas A and B for all of my levels right there. If I go to my dependent views option here, normally what you'd do, by the way, first is you'd create a master type plan. So I've got this enlarged floor plan here. I might have an enlarged ceiling plan view template that I would use that has the appropriate scale for those. Maybe I even name it based on the scale. That's possible as well. But I would have usually an enlarged plan view for that. I don't have one of those right now. So maybe I want to go out here and create a ceiling plan. Do I have one of those? I don't think I have an actual, there we go, because I'm not in the right area. Ceiling plans, here we go. So if I go to my ceiling plans here, I want to have like a general reflected ceiling plan for all of my levels in my building. This is just creating the master plan view for this. It's going to name it based on the level using the abbreviation. It's going to use the view template name, which is reflected ceiling plan here. It's going to use the phase. In my case, I'll do new construction. I'll do existing. Why not? We'll do existing construction. And I'm going to make it so it says EXST here, so it has the existing suffix on it since this isn't specifically an existing ceiling plan. This one is, but maybe I want, I don't know, whatever. I'll do an existing ceiling plan. We'll do that, no abbreviation. That way it puts existing ceiling plan in my name. So I'll stick with my naming convention out there. So if I add this down, and I'm also going to put here master because this is going to be an overall plan for myself. So I'm going to add these down below. This creates the master plan view for me. That gives me a specific naming convention here. So I'm going to go ahead and create those views. That'll just dump them directly down here in this little list. Yeah, I probably should have used a different view template for that. I'm going to go ahead and use a different view template. I want it to group a little differently. So we're going to grab these here, these master plans, and I'm going to associate this to, well, we'll make a copy. RCP, existing, master. So we're going to put a view creator abbreviation here of -master. We'll actually leverage this in our process here. View type is existing master, and I'll click, and I want to change my view scale to 1/4 inch per foot or whatever scale you want. So I'm just going to quickly go through and kind of modify these views. There we go. I've now got my existing master plan views up here. So they exist. I can work with them, and now I want to create those dependent views on that. The question was, how do you do that in a rapid way? Well, I would use View Creator again for this. This is kind of getting a little bit off topic, but I want to talk about how I can actually leverage my naming convention to fix some of these names here as well, and I'll show you why I do that. So if I change this out for, okay, I've got existing views. I've got here all my master ceiling plan views. I want to create area A and B for those. I just check all the boxes for those levels and for those scope boxes. Now you might have different scope boxes on a level by level basis. That's fine as well. You just check the boxes where you want an actual view made for a specific scope box. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it to create those views. I don't care about the building overall. I care about those specific areas. So I'm going to go ahead and create those floor plan views, and it'll generate them underneath my existing ceiling plan master plans out here. So I created 12 of those views pretty quickly here, and each one of those, if I click on it, has been associated to that proper scope box. All right, so it built it. It has the appropriate scale. It has the correct view creator abbreviation name up here someplace, wherever that happens to be. It's in there somewhere, whatever. View type is existing master. That's that I care about. Oh, there it is, view creator abbreviation, existing ceiling plan -master. All right, so it's got that in the name. So that's one thing I care about. I've got that. So as long as I'm using the right view templates, this next process is going to work very, very quickly, right? By the way, if you want to know more about the view creator, that particular tool was written specifically to save people days and days and hours of time We have other presentations about that from previous webinars. If you want to know more about that tool, again, at the end when we talk about the when that survey pops up, let me know. I'd love to share more about that with you if you want to know more about that one. But let's continue on with the spreadsheet link for today. So I've just generated a bunch of views out here. I have associated view templates. The naming convention may or may not match exactly what I want. In my case, what I really want this existing ceiling plan master to do right here is I don't want the ceiling plan master, the master word right there, to be included in my area A. I just wanted to say existing ceiling plan area A for my 00 level and area B. I don't want that master word in there, but my view creator is always going to put that master word in there. It's just what it does. It takes the master plan view's name and it suffixes it with the area. Okay, that's good, but it bothers me. It also doesn't have a really good title on sheet naming convention. So let's go through the magic of setting this up and getting every single view in my project to be renamed properly based on exactly my naming standard, which pretty much is laid out right here, the 2-digit level, the view template abbreviation, if it's a master view or not, and then the area that it's associated to. And if it's a working view down here, I want the user's initials to be suffixed inside of here as well. So I want all of that to be set up. Let's see how we can do it. I'm going to pull up Spreadsheet Link. Inside of Spreadsheet Link, I'm going to start by including my views. So here's my views. By the way, we're going to be saving these settings so that I can recall them later and not have to redo all this magic math stuff that I'm about to do here. So I want to start by doing my view name. That's the first thing that I'm going to try to control. That's usually the first column I'll put out here is my view name. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. I'm going to build this up completely from scratch right here in front of you. So here's my view name. It's all set up and ready to go. I care also about the title on the sheet. I'm going to grab that. I want to get that automatically filled out as well, depending on what type of view it is I'm dealing with. I do kind of care about view type, maybe a little bit. I want to maybe see what's going on, so I'm going to go grab view type here. I might or might not use this in part of my processes here, but I kind of like having them there so I can know what the view type was that the user specified. That's kind of how it sorts itself out over here in my project browser. I use the view type as part of that sorting method over there. Okay. I also want to know what the associated level is. So I'm going to go in here and say associated level. This will help me with my floor plans out here. Now, any view that's not a floor plan doesn't have an associated level. So I'm probably going to want to go through and filter out any view that doesn't have the word plan as a part of the view type out here. Or not the view type, rather, but just the type. There's actually a type option as well. So if I go find that, type right here, this tells me what kind of a view it is. Is it a 3D view? Is it a floor plan, a ceiling plan? I need to know about what kind of view this is. In fact, I'm going to filter this down right now because I don't care about elevations on this particular process. So I'm going to filter this out right now. If the type of the view right here, I'm going to use type, I think it's type text. If it equals or contains, rather, the word plan in it, I'm just going to type out plan. Okay, if it does that out here, that's the only one that I actually want to have in my list. So here I've got all my floor plans and all my ceiling plans, any enlarged plans, all those plan type views, they'll exist inside of here. That's all I care about are the plans. That's what we're dealing with right now in this particular workflow. Now I could do things for my elevations and sections, and if we have time, I'll do those later on. But here I care about the type of the view being a plan. Now I do also care about the view creator abbreviation. I'm going to use that as part of my naming convention. So I'm going to go down here and go view, where to go here? View, come on. Where's my view creator abbreviation? View creator, oh, there it is. It's right there in front of my eyes and I wasn't seeing it. Sometimes you just got to like look away and look back again, right? Okay, view template, I care what that is because in some cases I may not have a view creator abbreviation directly associated to something, or some of my plans like this level 1 here that I just generated, it doesn't have a view template. It does have a view creator abbreviation, but it doesn't have a view template. And so I can actually ask it questions about that and have it generate names based on some of that logic as well. If the view template is nothing or is -1 or something, I could have it go through and figure out what it's supposed to be. Now I do also care after the view template there, I want to know about that scope box. That I care about. That scope box right there is going to tell me if it's associated to that building overall or if it's down here associated to area A or B, and I can use that as part of my naming conventions out there. So I can look through the entire list here and see all those that are area A's or B's or whatever the case may be. So I care about that. And I also care about the phase of my views. The phase is going to be important because I use a lot of that in a lot of cases to to figure out if I'm going to suffix it with existing, or group it in different ways, or do whatever with my naming convention. So I'm going to look at that. And then finally here, the last one is owner. If one of my views happens to be a working view, like these up here are these working plans, there's a lot of times going to be working plans on multiple levels. So the only other delineator I can do is figure out who owns the view. And that's why I tell people, if you don't tell me who owns it, I'm deleting it on my project before I even run this process. That way I don't end up with weird naming issues where views try to name the same exact thing, hopefully. So yeah, I go through and I use the owner as part of my naming convention here. Now, in some cases, depending on what you're trying to do, if I'm not using a lot of view templates in my project, maybe you're not. Maybe what you can just do is export some of these properties out, and you can start changing them manually inside Excel. Like I could go out here and I could type in a new name if I wanted to for a new owner. If I wanted to be the owner of, I don't know, say I've got an existing working plan here. Maybe I want to take over CB's plan, and I want my initials in their place. I'm going to put SZ right here, and I'll be owning their new construction floor plan on level 4 at this point. It'll be mine. I'm going to change their name if I applied this back to my project right now. If I go apply active worksheet, hit yes, it's going to set me on that one, actually 2 views apparently. I modified 2 views somehow. It's going to set up both of those views to have whatever the name is that I put inside of there now at this point. So when I rename this, actually this view over here, whatever view that is, I have no idea whose it is going to get my name. This one right here, level 4 working, it's going to be my name eventually. Okay, let's go through the exercise of actually doing some of that Excel magic I talked about. Now, before you do Excel magic, any kind of formulas out here, I recommend that you go through the exercise of checking the little check boxes here and telling Spreadsheet Link that this particular column is going to be calculated. That saves you from doing a manual drag down of all the views that you're trying to rename by doing a formula. In Excel, you have to do that manually. You have to grab that grip and drag it down. And when you do that, when you drag that grip down, it autofills and automatically updates that formula all the way down. But you have no idea how many views you're going to have in a project the next time, or tomorrow for that matter. So by the way, the reason why there's so many errors usually is because it's trying to apply back properties to views that have the view template set, and it can't apply these properties back because they're locked. So that's why that errors dialog pops up and says there's a bunch of errors. It did make that one cared about, but it gave me a bunch of errors elsewhere because these things can't necessarily always be changed. It depends on what the view template's trying to set. So that might be why you see a bunch of errors inside. We'll see another area later today where there's a whole bunch of errors that pop up and they're meaningless, and I'll tell you why they're meaningless. So I ignore them. There are some times when errors are critical. Usually you'll have a good idea if they're going to be looking for something that's critical. That errors list can sometimes be really meaningful in that case, but I have a pretty good idea what is and is not meaningful in today's example. So my view name is going to be calculated automatically. My title on sheet's calculated. That way I can put my formula in the topmost row up here. And it automatically, Spreadsheet Link automatically makes it fill all the way down. It automatically updates my formulas for every single row that has data. And that saves me from doing the drag and autofill thing every single time I want to work with this. And that makes it so that after I save my settings, I can actually use Spreadsheet Link Express up here and have this be a whole lot more automatic. So Spreadsheet Link Express can be a really powerful tool as long as you're using this calculated method over here. All right, so now what I'm going to do, I know these formulas pretty good. I've done this process a couple of times, but still, I want to show you how I figure this out in Excel instead of me just, showing you how massively awesome my memory is. It's not actually that awesome. I have to think about it every single time I do it. So instead of me typing up here in Spreadsheet Link, where you could type all the formulas out if you knew what they were, I like using Excel because Excel has some heads-up displays, and it tells me about the formulas I'm trying to work with, and it gives me some error checking. Spreadsheet Link here, this window that we give you, it doesn't really do all that. It lets you author stuff, it lets you edit stuff, it lets you autofill things. You can do some cool formulas here that are pretty easy. But when you get into really complex formulas, at this point, right now, I recommend saving this out. Now before I do that, there's one more area that I needed data from. On my levels themselves, this is another thing that's really cool about Excel. I can look information up from other areas. On my levels themselves, there is some information that exists there. First of all, the level name. So I'm going to go grab the level name right here. That tells me what the actual name is. And that's actually being referenced over here on my, I got levels twice? How did I get levels twice? That's really weird. I did not want to get levels. Let me remove that. Remove. An error has occurred. Well, that's fantastic. Let's try again. Okay, well that's awesome. Apparently I screwed up my spreadsheet link somehow by telling it that I wanted levels even though levels doesn't exist, because it doesn't. All right, let me try saving my settings to a file and we'll come back to this in just a minute. By the way, I've got these things all completely saved out here with my Spreadsheet Link Express settings, so I can automate this process in a minute here, but let's call this 2015-0903 view, plan view naming. Okay, save this out, and I'm going to close this down, and I'm going to open it back up, and hopefully it will let me load my settings and not make me rebuild everything. Plan view naming, here we go. So it's in the process right now of extracting my views from my project. It's got my views, perfect. All right, now let's go ahead and grab levels again, now that it's happy. So levels, add across. So I've got levels, and I have one tab. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. So what I needed now is I want the name of the level. And the reason I want the name is because over here in my views, I'm actually asking what the associated level happens to be. So I can actually look up what that level name is from my Levels tab. And while I'm over here on my Levels tab, I also can get the View Creator abbreviation once again, whatever I set. So all those things that I set while I was up in the View Creator tool itself getting this established, those abbreviations can be looked up from this tab and used as a part of my naming convention over here, even though my actual view doesn't have any idea what the levels abbreviation is. In Revit, I couldn't do this. In Excel, I can do cross-tab lookup very easily, or moderately easily. So I'm going to go ahead and save this spreadsheet out for right now. I'm going to save this just directly to my desktop here. I'm going to put today's date on this, so 2015-0903, view naming formula file. I like to give long names so I know exactly what the heck's going on in this file, so I can either know if I'm going to need to delete it later on or not. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file out, and it wants to know if I want to open it, which I'm going to answer yes to, so I can pull this across to our active page over here, and this is Microsoft Excel. So now when I'm going through the process of authoring a formula, I can do some testing here, and once I get my formula all worked out, I can copy the formula from here and directly paste it over here into my Spreadsheet Link window and have my Spreadsheet Link auto-propagate that all the way down. Okay, so that's the way that I'm going to run this. So let's go back into Excel here real quick, and we're going to start building up our naming conventions for this. Now, what I'm going to do on my naming convention here is I'm going to start by figuring out what the level abbreviation happens to be. Okay, so to do a level abbreviation lookup, I'm going to start up here in my first cell and just go equals. That's how you start a formula in Excel. You put in equals. And the command that I'm going to use for this is a command called VLOOKUP. It's a simple lookup method that's going to pull information off the Levels tab. It's not a super extreme way to do this. It's just a simple little way to do a quick lookup here. There's other ways of doing it. I'm going to use VLOOKUP. So VLOOKUP, if I start typing out VL, it'll actually pull up VLOOKUP here in my list. I can click on that, or double click on that rather, and it'll pull up that formula for me. This is another reason why I like doing some of my formula authoring directly in Excel, because it makes it so that I get the heads up display, and I also can know if I look just down below that, it tells me exactly what the next field input values happen to be. Like, it wants to know what the lookup value is going to be. What am I looking up from? What am I trying to use as a source piece of data? I'm going to use this value over here from F4. F4 is the level name that I'm trying to look up on a different tab. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a comma. That takes me to the next field here, and it wants to know what table array I'm looking up from. So where is the lookup information stored? And for me, it's going to be stored over here on my Levels tab, and it's going to be stored here from C4 all the way down. And I'm going to go down a little ways because I have no idea how many levels are going to exist in my building. So I'm going to go down to like C25, right? I can include all these down here, and even if there's no data in them, it makes this a repeatable process. So when I work on a project that has greater than, what is this, 6 levels, I can leverage those other levels as well. You may want to go further than this, but this is a good start. So I'm looking up the value that exists in F4, which for me is basement level. It's going to look in this table and try and find the name basement level in the very first column. And then what it wants to know is what value do I want to return, which is the column index number. So what I want to return is the one from column 2 over here. So I'm going to put 2 as my second column. This is my first column. It always looks up from here. It's going to return my second column. And if I close my parentheses off right here and hit enter, over here, it should actually decide to pull a lookup. Now, it's not for some reason. Let me kind of autofill this down and see what's going on here. In some cases, it's giving me a lookup returned on some of these. In other cases, it's giving me NA. I don't know why it's giving me NA. Basement level does exist over there, I believe, on my levels. Yeah, it's right there. It's 0, 0. It should be working just fine. But for whatever reason, it's not doing what I'm asking it to. So there's another thing that I can do here, because eventually this is going to give me a problem. All of these are going to reply as NA as well. And the reason why, if you keep an eye on what's doing right here, as it autofills this down, it's actually incrementing the table that it's looking up from. So it's going to 15. If I hit escape here and look up here, it starts at C4 to D25. If I click down here, it's at C11, D32. That's not going to work. So what I'm going to do in my very first cell is put in a $sign in front of the 4 and a $sign in front of the 25. That's a trick you can use in Excel. So when you autofill down, it doesn't start auto-incrementing these numbers at all. It leaves them right where they are. It'll auto-increment this guy over here, the F4, so it'll actually reference cell F5 when it gets drugged down here, but it'll leave my actual range of selection C4 to D25. So hopefully when I correct this, it'll actually start working for the most part. It's still doing some kind of a goofy lookup there. It doesn't like my basement level for some reason. B-A-S-E-M-E-N-T level, basement level. Should be working. Looks like it's just fine, but for whatever reason, it's goofing up. All right, let me just do this. Let me just go down to the exact cell reference. Maybe it's having some issues with how long that's going. Let me start back up here again and just go directly to D9. We'll make it, nope, it doesn't want to find basement level. Well, that's really annoying. It should want to find it. Well, for now, we're going to ignore the fact that it's not finding that. It should. I'll maybe use a different lookup a little later on. But for now, if I drag this down all the way, you can see it's actually getting, for the most part, other than when the basement level is in use, it looks like it's doing it well. In this case, level 1 as well. It's finding a little error there. I don't know why, but odd that. And now it's doing it on level 1. Well, let's try this, C3 through D29. Oh, look at that. Now it wants to find it. All right, does it work for everything? No. F4, F5. Well, that's fantastic. Now it's not looking up any of my information. You know, when you do these things, kind of things live, it always becomes real interesting sometimes when it wants to goof up on you. Let me try doing something here real quick. I'm going to copy something from a previous lookup that I've done and paste it over here and see if it wants to work. And that should be equals. All right, still my basement level is being angry. All right, whatever. We're going to fake like that works, and we're going to continue on to the next little area here. So the next part that I want to work with here is putting in a hyphen after it does that base lookup. So I'm going to put in and, quote, space, dash, space, quote. That's going to suffix everything that I've got so far with that that hyphen right there. I'm going to start working right here because basement level is freaking out on me. So right there, it's got that 1, or 01, space, dash, space. I'm going to put another and up here and go to my next section. My next section that I want to look up from is a little bit more complex. What I want to do ultimately is find what the view creator abbreviation is over here. So I'm going to basically say use the view creator abbreviation. Actually, this cell right here, H5. So it's going to figure out what that is, and it goes 01 space dash space floor plan. Now, there's probably a little bit of logic I could put in here. If there isn't a view creator abbreviation for some reason, I could use the view template names. I could put an if-then statement. It would do something like this. If, for some reason, H5 equals nothing, then go ahead and use the view template name. Otherwise, use H5. Okay, I could, oh, H, not percent, H5. So I could do something like that. So if for any reason any of these are empty, and I don't believe any of them are because all of my view templates have a view creator abbreviation, but if for some reason this was empty, it would use whatever the view template over here happened to be. Okay, so it would use the view template name. There's other things I could do where I could say, you know, if both of those are empty, I mean, you could get pretty complex with this. In my case, I'm assuming people are using a view template in my standards. Hopefully that's what they're doing. If they aren't, that could be an issue. Somebody was saying that I might need a 0 at the end of this formula. That might fix it so that it actually works with my basement level up there. Hey, look at that. It works on my basement level. Thank you for that little tip. Now everything works. Fantastic. What field was that? Range lookup. Oh, it's looking for something for a range, I guess. So yeah, sometimes that's actually an optional field, but every once in a while that'll fix problems that are acting up. In my other example that I wrote earlier, I didn't need that. Today I did. Every once in a while. This is why I don't usually use VLOOKUP. I use a different technique a lot of times, but this is a really shorthand method of doing a lookup there. In this case, that 0, that range, told it to find that value and look it up. So fantastic. Now I can work in my first cell. All right, so I've got my logic in there that says use the view creator abbreviation. The next thing that I want to do is I want to use the scope box as a part of my name. So if it happens to be an area plan like it is way down here and it's associated to area A, then I want it to suffix this with area A. But I don't want it to keep suffixing with none or with building overall, one of my scope box names that I do have associated with some of my views. So I'm going to do another and symbol here. So I'm going to go and quote space quote. That's just going to put a space between the view creator abbreviation and the scope box name. And I'm going to go ahead and put in there the cell reference here for the scope box. So right there. Oops. It looks like it kept my whole entire 4 row there. That's not what I wanted. And quote and, there we go, and my J right there, J4. So if I hit enter here, it's going to say none for all of these, all the way down my list, and that's not what I wanted to do. In fact, what I really wanted to do is probably put a hyphen in there between the actual floor plan name. So I'm going to put space dash space here, space dash space, enter, right? So now it goes hyphen none in this case. Well, I don't want it to say none. I also don't want to say building overall. So I'm going to put a little logic in here for this one. If J4, I'm going to do an or statement here. If or, I'm going to give it 2 different conditions to check for. If J4 equals none, comma, that's telling it the other condition, J4 equals building overall, if it equals either of those 2 values, then what I want it to do is put nothing. If it doesn't equal those 2 values, either none or building overall, I'm assuming it's a scope box associated to a view and it should have that as part of its suffix name. I'm going to have it use J4. Okay, that's J4. That's what I want to do. So in this case, as I drag this down, it's going to go ahead and do that. Now I'm noticing a little bit of an error in my logic. I'm putting that hyphen in there well before I've actually done my logic to figure out if I need that hyphen in the first place. So I'm going to take this hyphen out of here, cut that, and it's just going to go the view creator abbreviation, and then it's going to do an if check here, and I'm going to say if you're going to go ahead and put something, then go ahead and put the space dash space and the J4 value inside of that cell. So when I do that now, it doesn't put the hyphen unless it absolutely needs it. I can copy this all the way down here. Let's go down to where I've got some area plans. They're down here someplace. There we go. There's some area plans. It's actually going to put the area plan name on there automatically. Now, it's not stripping out the word master yet. That's a whole different bit of logic that I have to put into that portion where I'm grabbing the view creator name over here. And if it's actually got an area, I have to do an if check for that and strip out the master name. I'm going to not do all that logic in front of you just for sake of time. We're already 15 minutes from close here today, so I want to not do that little bit of logic. I'm just going to kind of close this off a little bit and tell it whether it's existing or new construction. So one more thing, and if, open parenthesis, if I'm in the wrong field here. Let's go up to the top field up here. So we'll do this again, and if, let's make this a little bit wider. The phase over here equals existing, then put a quote, space dash space, quote, or not space dash space, quote, put EXST. So I'm going to suffix it with EXST if it's an existing view. Otherwise, I want it to do nothing. Okay? And then finally, one more thing. I could check if the view creator abbreviation says working. And if it does say working, then I could tell it to also suffix with whatever my owner's name is over here. In fact, what I'll do is just say, and if this equals nothing, put nothing, otherwise L4. Quote, open parenthesis, close quote, and L4, and quote, close quote. All right. So that way it's going to go through and suffix it if it has an appropriate suffix that it needs. So if I drag this all the way down my list right here, I'm going to get existing where there's supposed to be existing floor plan views. If any of these happen to be working views, which I'll get to eventually, let's just double check there's some more existing views right there. These are all my area plans. Right here some working views. It does have that abbreviation, so it's going to put that as part of the name. In fact, I'm going to change this up just a little bit and go with a space dash space again for that, so that it automatically, there should be a way to autofill. I think it's like an alt click or something like that, or alt down or whatever. But if I just drag this down again here, now it goes existing, and the fact, so it tells me who that user happens to be. In this case, these are all NDs apparently. If I look over to the right, yep, they're all NDs. And if I keep going down, it'll find out some of those are CBs and some of those are SZs. And so it standardizes my name across the board using that working plan as part of the base. All right. So you can get pretty complex with this. You can get all kinds of naming conventions. And you can do whatever you want to do as long as you can define it and you can figure out logically how you would name something consistently. You can build a Revit formula that'll do that. Now, instead of me doing this all manually in front of you, I want to show you what my ultimate result was here on the one that I wrote just the other day. So I'm going to go on F4 over here. I have a cheat that I pulled up over here just so that I don't have to write this all in front of you. I'm going to copy this across up here to my L4. So let's go to the end. There we go. That's not the right one. Click here. There we go. Paste this out here. All right, so this is a little bit longer. And again, I need to put that (0) out here for whatever reason on this guy. This one, as I scroll this down here, you'll notice the naming conventions pretty much stay the same all the way down. Not much different. But what you'll start seeing here is as I get down into the master plan views right there, they all stay master. This is where the magic starts happening. A lot of extra logic up here about the master view name up there, whether it's none or overall, things like that. So as I drag this down further, now my floor plans strip the master name off and just call itself out as area A or B, depending on what the primary portion of that master name is. I still have the same naming convention out here for these, except for I didn't put the hyphen in there. And so I can use that all the way down that list. So at this point, what I could do is take that and paste it over here into the formula field here. And as I hit enter, that'll automatically run all the way down that list. Apparently, it doesn't like the fact that I didn't put that 0 reference in there again. (0). There we go. That'll fix it all the way down my list. This is the cool thing about using the spreadsheet link over here is as soon as I tell something that it's calculated, all I have to do is fix the first row and it auto-propagates all the way down. I can see those names all the way down my list. So the other thing that I would do is I would take parts of this name right here and I would uppercase them, or I'd format it in a certain way to put this all as uppercase so I get the right name on my sheet. So I have an example of that as well. Again, instead of me typing this all out for you, what I'm going to do is just steal this from a previous worksheet that I've got over here. Just because, again, sake of time, we've only got about 10 minutes left here. So as I come back over into my spreadsheet link side, this is a calculated field as well. So if I paste this in here, I'm basically saying use uppercase if the name includes the word master. For whatever reason, then use the value of H4. Otherwise, if it's a working plan, do something. I'm actually saying if it includes master or working plan, don't place it on a sheet at all. That's the title of my sheet is don't place on sheet. So you were asking earlier about how you could actually look up and say something like not on sheet. If a view is not on a sheet, I could actually suffix my view name with not on sheet potentially by using a lookup to figure out what sheet it actually happens to be on. In this case, I'm just using part of my view name to say don't place on the sheet in the first place as a part of my, so if somebody does throw this on a sheet, it's actually going to say don't place on sheet. They're going to go, oh, I probably shouldn't place on a sheet, or they should change what the view template is or something like that. Then I'm also taking and stripping off part of the numbering convention over here and replacing it with the actual associated level that it's associated to. So now when I hit enter, this is going to go down and call out my title on sheet as basement level presentation plan, or level level 1 floor plan existing. I could actually spell out the existing word if I really cared to. Basement level floor plan, level 1 code plan, level 2 code plan, and whatever. So this is all now able to be based on that formula that I wrote, which looks for some certain properties on the view name. I'm actually looking at the name directly right here, and I'm replacing the 00 with the actual level name. That's ultimately what I'm doing. It's a couple of other things, but that's the gist of it. So now I can save my settings. I can save these out to my file again. Save these if I go to my Express Tools folder here, Spreadsheet Link. My view naming, that's type naming. I want to go to view naming. I can go ahead and replace this plan view naming settings file right here, save this out, replace that. And then instead of me having the user go here ever and run this directly and see all the stuff that I'm doing and potentially screw something up, what I'm going to do instead is tell my end users, go ahead and use the Spreadsheet Link Express window up here. Use that. So what they're going to do is run this, and now if you pay attention over here after I load it, you'll watch all those views get renamed directly. Go ahead and load my plan view naming settings, click open right here. It's going to go ahead and open it up and just run it direct. So apply my settings, here it goes. It's going to rip through my file, it's going to rename all my views, all of my floor plan views are going to get taken care of directly. And it does want to know if I want to name the corresponding level, because I duplicated some of these floor plan views and based them on the level. If I don't ever do this, this dialog box won't pop up. I'm going to answer no, I don't want my level renamed for my export CAD plans right there. So it updated 128 views. There was 59 errors. I could take a look at those if I really cared to, but it did rename 128 of my floor plan views. They're all ready to go now. All of my working views have already been named based on level, based on user. That's all figured out. I've normalized everything across my project browser, consistent naming convention up here in this area where I've got things like my master plans. This is calling it out as an existing ceiling plan, area A. Now I could do some extra logic and say don't suffix exist if the word existing is found in the name already. I could do that. In this case, I have exist suffix in all of these just because I wasn't checking for that. But down here as well, see I've got my floor plan master and my floor plan area A and B. I love this naming convention. This to me is great because now I have the word master inside of there. And also on my title on my sheet over here, if I mouse over that, it says basement level floor plan dash area A. It's actually on a sheet right now. If I go down here into my sheets, I believe I've got an enlarged plan view out there somewhere. Let's go take a look. Main floor plan enlarged. Okay, title on my sheet right down here, figured out, level 1 floor plan area A. Already figured out. That name has been configured because it automatically got renamed in my project browser. So users can run that one process, names their views, figures out their titles on their sheets, they're ready to rock and roll. Another one that you can use, and this is where I'm going to show you that one little secret in the last 5 minutes today that you can do. I'm going to load up Spreadsheet Link again. I'm going to run it through Spreadsheet Link Express intentionally, but I'm going to load it in Spreadsheet Link and show you one secret that you can do to actually do a couple of other things. Like earlier somebody asked that question about how do you actually modify and name views and call it not on sheet if it's not on a sheet with the actual view name. You could do that by using this next technique I'm going to show you right here. I'm going to load my settings up from a file and show you what for my detail numbering, show you what that technique looks like. I have done a saved settings using an advanced save with my save settings. With my advanced save settings here, when you do an advanced save, one of the settings that you have is to start with an already pre-existing Excel file. So detailnumbers.xlsx is a file that I made earlier, and it has this tab down here called import_views. When Spreadsheet Link Express sees a tab that's called import_, it looks at the name of the tab, views, and it also looks at the element ID, which is calling out the fact that this is a views category. It looks at that, and it uses this as the import tab instead of the original views tab over here. So when it runs in Spreadsheet Link Express, yes, I extract my data, but I use this data over here on my import views tab to only import the view name and the title on sheet. That's all I'm importing. Now in my case, the reason why I'm doing this is because on my Import Views tab, I specifically want to check to see if it's a drafting view type. I actually look over here in my Views tab and I look at the type of view. I'm trying to figure out if it's a drafting view or if it's an elevation or if it's a section. And depending on which one it is, notice right here my title on sheet doesn't know what it's doing just yet. My view name right now is just section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever the random names are. If I go here to my import views, I have the sheet number being looked up and the detail number on that sheet, and I'm also just replacing the title on sheet with wall section or building section, or if it already has a name, I'm using whatever name it already has. If it has nothing, I just use nothing. By the way, this particular one is going to give me a grip of errors out here because I've had this propagated all the way down to 103 down here. I could probably make this a lot longer, but what I'm doing with this particular lookup here is each one of these is looking up the information. I don't know how many views I'm going to have. So on this tab in Excel, since this isn't being driven by Spreadsheet Link Express or Spreadsheet Link, I had to pre-populate as far down as I wanted to go. I went down to 103. You might want to go down to 400, whatever. I'm filtering this particular set out so it only shows me certain views, specifically those views that are on sheets. If it has a sheet number, it shows up in this list, and therefore it gets auto-corrected over here for its view name and its title on sheet. You could reverse my filter. If you wanted to say, give me all of those whose sheet number is nothing, that's empty, then I could use this Import Views tab over here and take every one of their view names and suffix it. Instead of with a sheet number and detail number, I could suffix that with not on a sheet pretty easily. So I could get all my views to get renamed based on that. So for whatever reason, it looks like my call dropped, but that's okay. I think we're still on. So what I'm going to do at this point is just run this in Spreadsheet Link Express. So Spreadsheet Link Express, just pay attention to some of my view names up here. Some of these are on sheets already. I'm going to go ahead and load my settings from a file. Here's my detail numbers Spreadsheet Link Express saved settings. Apply those to my project. It's going to rerun back through my entire project here, and it's going to rename my views and fix my titles on sheet for some of those. In this case, 29 views got updated. 71 errors. Like I said, I'm going to have a lot of errors because a lot of those are just empty fields it doesn't know what to do with. That's okay. But if I start looking through my views list out here, now I've got my floor plans automatically named based on the sheet that they're on and the detail number on that sheet. If I start taking a look at some of my area plans out here, those are also named based on their sheet and detail number right here. If I actually look on the sheet itself, some of these sheets down here, going down to my sheet list, looking still back at this main floor plan enlarged, I didn't touch the view name for this one. The title on sheet stayed the same. But if I go down here to things like my wall sections right here, my sheets are laid out kind of poorly here, but each one of them specifically says wall section, not some random name out there. So I can have my title on sheet all show the same thing. I know some of my clients like to have detail on every single one of their details. Just say detail specifically. I could do that. That's pretty easy to do. So there's quite a lot that you can do with Spreadsheet Link to automatically name your views, to automatically set titles on sheet, to automatically get sheet numbers, detail numbers, all kinds of things you can do to organize your project browser. I can even extract directly just the data values themselves and put this out into a spreadsheet and manually type out names that I wanted this to do in Excel if I wanted to. So there's quite a bit that could be done to make this all work pretty smooth and pretty nice.